afternoon. My name is Mariana Amatullo, the National Dean of the School of Architecture, Art, and Design at Tecnológico in Monterrey. And I am just thrilled to be welcoming today in the studio here in Mexico City in our CCM campus, Allan Chochinov. Welcome, bienvenido.
Gracias.
So we're delighted to have had a lecture by Allan starting the Creative Leader series for this semester. Allan is an educator, writer, speaker, advocate for the power and capacity of design. Many of you know him through his role as the founding chair of the MFA of Products of Design at the School of Visual Arts in New York City, and a partner of Core 77, the design network that really served the global design community since the mid-1990s, a pioneer initiative and work that Allan, you did with Core. And of course, these days, he's also faculty at Columbia University School of Professional Studies, very awarded colleague in the world of design, lectured all over the world, and very happy that we had him here at Tec de Monterrey. So, and I have to say, I'm very, very lucky that I also count Allan as a dear friend. So it's extra special to have you here.
For me too. Thank you so much.
Yes.
It's an honor to be here.
So I thought we would start this conversation. I wanted to ask you, you studied philosophy in your undergraduate work,
yeah.
And then you went on to study design. When did you have this awareness that design might be an interesting discipline to pursue?
I love this question. You know, everything, I guess, makes sense in hindsight, where you see all of the sort of deterministic steps leading up to your present. You know, I didn't really realize at the time, but philosophy and design are just so linked. I've often talked about like design is like philosophy with your hands. Creative problem solving, problem framing, sort of thinking deeply about something, thinking strategically, lateral thinking, induction, deduction, abduction. It's like all of those things that we actually practice in design are the kinds of things that we study in philosophy. And the other thing about philosophy that I loved is that everything in a philosophy curriculum, they're impossible problems. Mm-hmm. You know, good and evil, and just, you know, freedom and determinism. And if they weren't impossible, they wouldn't still be on the philosophy curriculum. And so very early I was attracted to like sort of the hardest problems to solve. And when I discovered design, I was just like, you know, this is sort of the same kind of intellectual challenge, but we actually get to make things. We get to prototype digital, physical, social, business. We get to try and do something a little bit about it. And I was pretty late discovering design. I was always like a maker. I always like had a portfolio. I always took like art and design classes, but I didn't, like most people, understand that design is actually a profession. And the way that I used to think about it is like I could be an inventor, but like get paid for it. And I loved inventing things. And so it was a perfect match that was almost an accident, but again, looking back, just made 100% sense to me.
Yes, and do you have any sort of fond memories of going to graduate school in New York City at Pratt?
I did.
Design?
I went to Pratt Institute, and I studied in the industrial design department. And I had a great time. It was very, you know, as a community, we were in the studio all night, you know, working late, and, you know, just, again, the studio method in classes and critique, and then doing homework all together. And I really loved the creative community. Mm-hmm. And of course, being in New York, there were just like so many things to do and see, so there was a tension between, you know, spending time on your schoolwork, but also like having a New York City adventure. Mm-hmm. And I think coming as a grad student, a little bit older, I had some perspective that I really needed to do both. And often I do kind of complain and kind of tease students, like, you know, you came to New York City to do more than 2 years of homework. Like, you know, your homework will never end. As soon as you finish your homework, there's new homework. And I think that's actually sort of funny and important to point out.
Right.
But that you're only going to be in New York if you're coming for like a 2-year grad school experience. You have to do other kinds of things. You have to see things, you have to meet people, and of course in New York City there is just so much around art and design. Can't spend all the time in the studio. So I tried to make the most of it. Yeah, made me who I am.
And then, of course, you stayed.
I did stay, yeah.
It was more than the 2-year.
It was more than a 2-year thing. My favorite teacher, David Brown, who taught 3D, 3D design, seeing in 3 dimensions, and 3D abstraction, and actually really building things 3-dimensionally. I met his daughter on a blind date 6 years later.
Wow.
And we got married. So that's one of the things that kept me staying in New York, and it was a sweet story. Very
that
sort
will
of
do
meant to
it.
be. We had a lot to talk about on our first date.
That will do it.
Yeah, it was great. So it's been an incredible adventure, and I've been there ever since. I think I came in 1988 or 87 for grad school.
Yes.
And stayed.
Yes, and of course I know, and I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about this very important project you did still as a graduate student, which was your thesis project that sort of opened up in your career, early career as an industrial product designer, this intersection between design and the medical field. So I know from other interviews and conversations we've had over the years how consequential this project was.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that project.
Yeah, it really did catalyze so much of what I did since and sort of still believe in. Even as a student, I loved inventing things, but I had a problem with solid waste. And this was irreconcilable to me. How could you invent things and make things and manufacture things and not be making sort of garbage? As a student, I read Victor Papanek. I was totally converted. I was just like, you know what, I love this, but I want no part of it. And I had this idea that if I went into medical design, that I could live with all the garbage that I was creating. That story is a little out of order because the way that I got into medical design, I was looking for a thesis topic, and I had several friends who were in medical school at the time. And so I called a couple of them, one Stuart Brooker, who was an anesthesiologist in Atlanta at the time, actually at Emory. And I said, I'm fishing around for a thesis topic, and I was thinking about medical design, and I'm wondering if there is some sort of design problem that you could think about, maybe you could get back to me. And he says, I don't have to think about it at all. I remember this conversation like it was this morning. He says, you have to design a hypodermic needle that is stick-proof. A stick-proof hypodermic needle. And I'm like, tell me more. And he says, well, we are living in HIV/AIDS right now, and healthcare professionals are terrified. And one of the dangers in the healthcare space is accidental needle sticks. You draw blood or you deliver medication, and then you turn and someone's standing there and you accidentally stick them, and you can contract HIV/AIDS in those days. And so there was incredible fear and terror for people who worked in healthcare clinics and hospitals. And just this seemed, again, like an impossible problem to solve because the needle is sharp. It's literally called a sharps. And so that's when I discovered things like scalpels. There's lots of sharps in the medical industry. There's lots of things that can hurt you. In fact, even when if you give blood, there's always many vacutainers, test tubes of blood. And blood is living, and it's building up pressure. And so when you open a test tube, if you open it towards you or sort of away from you, the blood, biological material inside can aspirate into your eyes, and you can actually contract HIV/AIDS that way. So even test tube caps. So I started getting into this project and realized it was really all about laboratory blood collection. So that the minute it leaves a body and finds its way to typically a lab, there's all these moments where it is dangerous. And so my project went from designing a stick-proof hypodermic needle, which the design I came up with is largely the design that's in the world. It's not because of me. Many people were working on this. It was a very sort of common sense, sheath that covers the needle. You experience this all the time now, right? These are mandated by law.
But at the time, it was like non-existent.
No, and actually people were very resistant. Like, no matter what your invention does, we're not going to pay for it, because already they couldn't afford devices. So this really set me off on this trajectory of designing in the medical space. I was lucky to get 2 off-campus thesis advisors, Jeffrey Capek and Kazuna Tanaka, who had a design firm themselves, who advised me, and then of course I kind of forced them to hire me when I had graduated, and I worked there for 6 years designing all sorts of medical devices, diagnostic, a lot of laparoscopic instruments, ultrasound machines, bone density, measurement devices. It was just absolutely fascinating. I miss it. It was really exciting time, and I just found it very meaningful, the kinds of work.
Yes. Would you say that was a moment and those kinds of projects that shifted your sense of the fundamental responsibility we have as designers?
It did. 100%. I couldn't put it better than you just did. It also opened up this sort of complexity around sort of who are you designing for, right? Are you designing in a space? Are you designing for the healthcare professional? Are you designing for the patient? Are you designing for the actual interaction or the ergonomics of devices? Are you designing for disposability and waste? I mean, a lot of medical waste is incinerated, it's burned, which creates a new kind of toxicity. Just the manufacture, the scale of the amount of stuff in medical, let's say in a hospital. And now, because of, all sorts of reasons, transmission, but also insurance, everything is plastic and single use. So when I started out, there were a lot of devices that were made out of steel, essentially, stainless, and you would autoclave them, you would sterilize them, and now it just make everything out of plastic and throw it out, right? Just sort of safer all around, but creates mountains of solid waste. So in some sense, who am I working for? Right? Is it the doctor-patient relationship? Is it the device manufacturers? In my thesis research, I talked to people in the OR and the ER. One amazing moment was talking to literally a medical device salesperson, in a waiting room when I was waiting to talk to, I think it was a healthcare worker, I think in blood donation, I think it was. And just waking me up to just sort of the grown-up world of medical devices, and just what a business it was, and sort of the secrecy and the patents and the trademarks, and it was just opened up all of these other dimensions of design that they just don't teach you typically in school, at least back then, that were fascinating and hard and really problematic. And I became even more fascinated, and just this idea that everything is made of people, and that there was politics involved, and policy involved, and regulatory involved, and the FDA approval involved, and again, the patents, and the design patents, and utility patents, just the complexity of the whole thing. I don't think it scared me so much, it fascinated me.
Yeah.
It was scary. But I was just there's just so much to do, and I could really sort of find my spot of where I would be or could be a creative individual, with sort of a design capacity, and where I could insert that capacity was just, there was so much surface area, and I was hooked, I think, at that point. And again, it just seemed so purposeful. I have doctors and pharmacists and a lot of in family and friends, a lot of people in that space, so it is sort of ironic that I ended up there in the first part of my design career, because I didn't go to medical school, but in a weird way I kind of did.
Yes. Yeah. Well, sometimes life has a way of finding us.
It was a weird sort of destiny.
But also in what you're sharing, I'm reminding of something you say often, and you reminded us of that in your lecture, right? That designers are in the consequence business, right? And that it is a business. Can you reflect, thinking now about the kind of designers we might need at this moment? How are we preparing them for that consequence business?
Wow, that is
a big question.
That is the question. You know, it's really tricky. I've definitely devoted this portion of my professional career to education, to students, and trying to think about like sort of what do students need now, and reconciling that with like what do they need next. And I remember like when I conceived of this MFA program, I guess it was 14 or 15 years ago, sort of year zero. You know, we had this history where I was designing this program that was going, you know, that would launch in 2 years, and that there would be graduate students who went to a 2-year program, and that they would graduate in 4 years. So I was trying to imagine the world in 4 years, 4 years earlier, that we would somehow prepare them for this imagined world. And that was, I don't know if it was impossible, it was hard. But at the same time, had to create a kind of educational experience where it didn't matter what the future was. These were, in some sense, you know, design fundamentals, design essentials, and in some sense, it was easier to try and concentrate on equipping students with the kinds of things that one might guess that would always be relevant and powerful, no matter sort of what world they emerged into. And so I think it was really a balance between the two, is what were the consequences of the work that they were going to do, but what was also the consequence of an education that they would actually go through, that should be resilient or evergreen or you know, just useful and impactful and soulful and enriching. And I think that that's why I concentrate so much on what people call the soft skills of design. Like, you know, like just being with people, you know, how to be in a meeting, how to listen, the hardest thing of all, how to lead with generosity, how to send a thank you note. These are things that I've just really always prioritized, arguing that everything is made of people, no matter what happens, no matter what the design task is, no matter what the design tools are. Typically, you're going to be working with groups of people to try and get something done, to try and create positive consequence in the world. And could we actually teach those kinds of things? Immediately that comes to mind is point of view. Right? So what is the sort of the user-centered design? And what is author-centered design? What does the designer actually have to say if we could just hire sort of any designer? And to me, like, this is really the central challenge of education, is teaching students sort of how this works, like how is this actually done, but also keeping in mind that the way that we've actually been doing things is not really working out so well. Like, you know, look outside, like it's not going so well, right? Like, really any system that you can think of is in a kind of breakdown crisis right now, and it's, you know, there's many, many reasons that would take too long to talk about. So do we really have an obligation to teach students the way it's done when the way it's done isn't working out so well? So, you know, I do have a contrarian voice around that. I'm more author-centered, like what does the design creative person have to offer into the world versus, you know, sort of a very strict user-centered design process. And so I feel like I have a sort of a balancing point of view, because most education is very user-centered. These are some of the things that, you know, I guess keep me up at night and get me up in the morning.
Yes.
The things that I worry about and the things that I'm excited about.
So now looking back at the program, and maybe you started answering that question, you were coming from teaching product design at Pratt, and I remember visiting one of your courses early on when I was doing the social impact work of Design Matters at Art Center. But were there specific ways of teaching or knowledge from industrial design that you sought out to dismantle when you created products of design?
Oh, I like that. That word has a lot of heat to it.
Dismantle.
I know. I mean, certainly, you know, I'm contrarian by nature, and so challenging sort of anything that people believe is the truth is just like, you know, I'm always going to sort of be the, I guess, a little bit of a provocateur. Yes, I mean, I think I had a reaction to beauty as the the what you were going for. I think I believe that there were enough beautiful things in the world that maybe we didn't need to do that anymore. Although again, like being able to make something beautiful like can actually be taught and learned, and it is an incredible superpower. That's not something that I was particularly interested in, but I had respect for. I think that the practice of design was always up for grabs for me. I think I was also lucky in a moment where interaction design was being born, right? It wasn't like a thing. Service design was really, in some sense, unheard of in this part of the world. Very popular, with the Design Council in London. And I was friends with John Thackeray, who just sort of opened that world up to me. And then the third thing was really around business. So physical product design, I felt like strong in, or at least sort of I understood the vocabulary and the challenges. Interaction design was newly born and exploding. Understanding that everything is a service was a revelation to me. Social impact as like an objective of like, this is what we actually are trying to do, back to your question around consequences. And then a vocabulary and a comfort with finance. And finance was a tricky one because I really, I think that this is true. I think that designers have a prejudice against business. I've said many times that I think designers think that, or a lot of designers think that the business is dirty, and certainly it can be dirty. But for me, if you don't understand finance and money and how that works, I think that there's just too many meetings that you can't be in.
That's right.
And those meetings result in decisions that then sort of get handed to a designer. Okay, so here's what we've decided you're going to now make. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the idea that you're not in the decision-making process. And so for me, it's really, really critical that designers have some sort of comfort, facility, that they're not fluent, but they're conversant in finance, and they understand the impact of markets on design decisions. And putting that sort of all together, I think doesn't make, again, it's not a radically interdisciplinary viewpoint. I think it's actually a very common sense viewpoint that many, many people share, especially at this university where we're sitting. I don't think that people really got that a while ago. They saw design disciplines as very siloed, and that each of them required specialized knowledge, a specialized toolkit, practice, and that they were exclusive to each other.
Yeah.
And I think the last, it's a very long answer, the last thing I would say is that I think that designers are translators. That the specializations in the world, the slices of specialization are so thin and so deep, and they need to be to solve complex problems, that literally nobody can talk to each other. They don't have the same vocabulary, and so I see one of the most amazing capacities of design is as a translator, to be able to be conversant in each of these disciplines so that you can help them talk to each other and work together, because design is a team sport. And the challenges that we have, the wicked problem challenges that we have in the world, of course they have to be designed by groups. Groups of teams, not just teams. So how does that happen? We need these personalities, these design people,
yes,
who can talk to all sorts of people, again, with generosity, with listening, and somehow synthesize the problem spaces and somehow come to some sort of strategic launching where we're going after something that we have a kind of agreement about, that we see possible changes in, that we can make a dent in these challenges. They seem to be getting harder and harder, but also designers don't give up.
Yes.
We're the kind of species that just doesn't take no for an answer and will not stop. And I love that about design people.
Yeah, and I love that you're really talking about the superpower of connecting multiple perspectives and connecting the dots that come so naturally, I think, in the discipline. As you speak, Allan, I really think that it's very obvious that you have, in a way, helped shift with that program, right? The conversation at that time from industrial design to a more broad understanding of products, of systems, of services, and of business. What do you believe, looking back, right? What has held true in terms of the assumptions you had and in the work you did to shape that program? What has held true today? And what of maybe some of that curricular design and some of those assumptions don't work anymore? And we're talking about the moment of Gen AI, right?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, like, this is the question. A lot of people are not interested in this question, not interested in AI, and I think that, like, that's okay, that's their prerogative. You know, AI has these, you know, what I would call like the 5 original sins of AI that I think are irreconcilable. You know, copyright, consent, environmental impact, surveillance capitalism, just, you know, privacy in general. And I think that, you know, it's all just sort of fruit of a poison tree. Right? We also have like new complications and new negative, like, you know, consequences of AI around social de-skilling, around actually like the cost of power, this just sort of maniacal building out of the server farms. The productivity around AI is really questionable. I use it a lot because I feel that's part of my job, is to experiment. I use it with students because after talking with a lot of design educators, we just have a strong feeling that the designers, these students, are going to go out and be forced to use these tools. And there isn't going to be a conversation around ethics, copyright, consent. And that in some sense we are sort of the original victims of all of this grab of material, but that it's unstoppable. And so this is very perplexing because we have something that is sort of at its absolute base very problematic, but seemingly unstoppable. I'm not sure it's seemingly unstoppable. I believe it is absolutely unstoppable. This is a freight train, it's a casino, it attracts people who like freight trains and casinos.
Yes.
And so we're at this moment where we see all of this coming. It's, you know, it's coming for every single like knowledge work, but it's coming for sort of anything that, you know, humans do, you know, not just knowledge work. I mean, robotics is like way further along than most people understand it to be, is my understanding. And so what are we doing? What are we for? And so when I use AI tools with students, I try and have a kind of ethical conversation with them, completely insufficient with the amount of time that we typically have, but at least to sort of ground, like, you know, this is probably not okay at all, but it's also, you know, going to be unavoidable. So maybe we need to use these tools to have some firsthand sort of experience of sort of what they can do. It's very easy to sort of see where they're going, and then it's also impossible to see where they're going because of the unpredictability of this.
Yeah.
Some people feel like this is inevitable. Other people feel that that's lazy and that it doesn't have to be inevitable. And so again, back to philosophy where we started, I mean, this is like the most philosophical conundrum there can be, and it's playing out live, right? Like every 4 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, there's a new kind of revolution.
New headline.
And so it's a race to like keep up with it, and it is a never-ending struggle to figure out how to dovetail it into education. I always I say many times at the beginning and through, like, if you want to say no to all of this, after you have had some experience with it, I'm not going to get in your way. You can absolutely reject this, but I do feel that students need to have experimented a little bit. The other thing is, the consequences are not necessarily all bad. The promise of this is that it will unleash these new kinds of capacities that will actually change the kinds of things that creative people do. So far, it's very good at eliminating salaries. It's excellent at that. And it's getting very good at doing our jobs. Like
Right.
it knows all the design moves. And so
Especially entry-level jobs.
well,
where they
that's
have a
like, I
lot.
think that's one of the social tragedies of the whole thing.
Right.
Is in the beginning, you join, let's say you leave school and you join a company and you're at these sort of lunches where you can see different positions sort of further ahead, sort of further down along, or other kinds of things that are happening in your organization. Like, oh, well, maybe I'm more sort of engineering, maybe I'm more marketing, maybe I'm more strategy or research, maybe I'm just more I'm great at teams. And so when you're working like on Zoom at home, atomized, using these AI tools, you're not learning any of that. And because these platforms are in some sense taking over all of these entry jobs because they're the easiest to synthesize, those jobs, like those positions don't exist. So those young people are not in those positions, seeing sort of possible futures, personal futures, and civilization futures ahead of them. They're just sort of, they're in this screen. And the social consequences of that are devastating. And the career consequences of it are, devastating as well. Nobody has an answer here. And that's the other thing. I have many conversations with many design educators about this. And I'm like, am I worrying about the right things? And they're like, yes, this is the conversation. Like, you are not alone. We are all scared and nobody knows the answer. And that's a very disquieting way to end a conversation.
Yeah.
But it's also, I really believe in like sort of radical candor with students. And I'm just going to tell them that. And I'm sorry if this is uncomfortable, but I have to be honest with them. At this stage in my career, like, I feel like that's the best thing that I can be.
Yeah. So maybe the flip side of that worry, right, about this next generation of designers who are encountering this very altered context. What gives you real, not just rhetorical optimism these days?
Yeah, I mean,
shifting that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we need to shift. I mean, just the unbounded capacity of creativity. I mean, it's not a philosophical insight. It's just, it is this kind of renewable resource, creativity. And I really do think that it's boundless. The things that I've seen, like students come up with, are just, that's why I do it. It's not even like, oh, we're learning with them. Like, of course we're learning with them. But some of the stuff that they come up with, that they create, that points to like this possible future world, like it's only optimistic. At the best of times, it's very sobering as well. But sometimes it's wondrous. And those moments are just, precious. And in design school, they happen all the time. Like, I think in life, they're just sort of generally relatively rare.
Yes.
But in design school, they're kind of every week. And I think that's why I never wanted to leave school. I kind of made one. I teach in lots of them. I was a camp counselor. I was always like probably, I was going to be like a teacher person. But back to the beginning, when I found design and this idea of like we could sort of invent anything, almost anything. Wow, what a way to spend your days.
Yes.
And so it's just, I've just had this amazing design adventure so far. And, every year there's like new students and new people. And even if teachers often, like teachers teach what they teach, there's that cliche. Even if your curriculum is pretty set, it's animated by completely new individuals who have never done it before. And so the results are just, unpredictable and fantastic. And I can't imagine like a luckier profession, frankly.
Yes.
It's just like being in the creativity business is, just fortunate, lucky. I thank my lucky stars every day.
Thank you. That is a very hopeful sort of area. And maybe the last question as we end. We are here in Mexico. And here at Tech and at the school, we're really thinking about future programs. We're thinking a lot as a university around the topic of purpose, right? And transformation. we really believe in this university that education, right, is a path toward impact and transformation. What advice would you give us in terms of imagining future programs and how might they be effective in inviting a new generation of students to be transformative?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. It's something that I've been grappling with for, years and years, decades, as a design journalist, trying to sort of participate in thought leadership, and as a teacher, in the classroom, and then as a chair in creating a program. There is definitely this balance between what are the fundamentals. In fact, I've given lectures called what are the contemporary tools of design? What are the contemporary fundamentals of design? When I went to school, it was literally point, line, plane, volume, texture, and color. Those were them. And I'm like, really? That's what design is made of? So, there's lots of teachers who still teach that way. That's okay. That can have some value. Balancing, I think, the soberness of what are we really up against here? And bringing in things like transition design and social impact design. And then what has never been possible before and what might be possible now and next. And yes, AI is bound to enter that conversation, but at a conceptual level, it is bigger than that. So what capacity do we have as a civilization and this sort of moment in history and in cosmology, if we can even think this big of sort of not only where are we, but when are we? And what do we have to work with? And that is the design material, right? Again, everything is made of people. We're not crafting people, we're not forming people. I think we are equipping people and cheerleading people. Right? And I think that's the true job of an educator. Yes to challenge and yes to equip, but also to just sort of step back and let them go. Right? So I think those are challenges as a teacher: is when do you push, when do you pull, and when do you get out of the way? And that is so hard because teachers know a lot. Yes. And you only have these students for a little bit of time, and school isn't everything. We've talked about it a lot here. So thinking about the future of education, you have to pay attention to what's possible now. What can we do in 4 years with an undergraduate cadre, and what can we do in a short 2 years with graduate students, remembering that they are leaving, they're going to leave, right? And that they're going to, in some sense, be ambassadors for, the word I would use is capacity. What could be possible? Have we given them confidence? Have we given them point of view? Have we given them presentation skills? Have we helped them lead with generosity? Have we taught them, or encouraged them to write thank you notes? All those things that are never going to be out of style. And then we miss them. Yes. Right? So they come in fresh. They come into a school like this, such an amazing place. And we have this responsibility to push, pull, and get out of the way, and knowing that they will be leaving. It may be like child rearing a little bit. You have them for this amount of time, and that time has to be as wonderful as it can be, knowing that they're going to leave. And that is not knowable what's going to happen after. It's knowable that they're going to transition to a next phase of life. What's the best thing that we can do while they're with us? This is the job. Yes. That's the question.
Well, Allan, thank you. I love that you're ending with this idea, right, of, in a way, our responsibility as educators is also creating opportunities for development of beautiful humans, right? So it's so great to have you here in Mexico at Tec de Monterrey. Thank you again for your time today. Yeah. Yes, thank you.